This is Jack Rice at the United Nations, and I'm here with Helen-Marie Gosselin, and she is the director of the UNESCO office in New York, again, representative to the United Nations. Helen-Marie, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks for this invitation.
We look at what's going on today. Today is Environment Day, but there is a connection between Environment Day and UNESCO, isn't there?
Of course, as you can well imagine, we talk about the necessity to safeguard the environment, to be able to diminish our footprint. Now, you can imagine that for 1/6 of humanity, almost 1 billion people, they cannot read or write. So access to literacy and to education in general and information is absolutely essential.
Do you find that in certain places in the world that's a luxury? As I mentioned to you during the break, and I'm not saying it should be, but I'm saying that it is a luxury. I'm just back from Sudan and Darfur, and I try to imagine where these kids want water, they want food, to say, here, let's sit down and learn how to write.
That is true, but you know, the question is always what human right has priority over the other. I mean, the first and foremost human rights probably has to do with the rights to survive. It's true if you're an American here, or if you're living in the Sudan, or if you're living in the earthquake zone of China right now. Absolutely true. But at the same time, and what UNESCO and many governments, including the United States government says, and many people, is that you cannot wait till you have access to everything you need. Till, of course, you need to have good health services, you need to have access to water, to food. As the world meets this week in Rome, this is a very important issue. But at the same time, we believe that with very low cost, we can bring at least a minimum of skills, of literacy and numeracy skills and basic education for people to be able to be lifted out of poverty. Because you mentioned access to water or to food. Can you imagine if a mother cannot read the medication that her child is being given in order to save this child who is becoming dehydrated? Or what it does to be illiterate in not having access to basic farming techniques, for example, etc. So it is absolutely essential. Yes, you need to safeguard the life of people. You need to make sure that people are healthy and immunized and have access to food. But you also need to be able to make them to live themselves out of poverty. We all know the proverb, the Chinese proverb. You give a fish to a man, he will eat for a day. You teach him how to fish, he's going to live for a lifetime. That is basically what literacy does.
It's such a complicated issue. I mean, as you're describing it, I'm thinking back to, I guess, 3 occasions where I've been reporting around the world. I remember talking to a teacher about trying to teach a student in southern Israel who's been getting bombed from Gaza on almost a daily basis. I'm thinking about some kids in Ramallah who have lost their school because it's been hit by the Israelis. I'm thinking even of a child who was hit when I was talking to them after all of these traumatic events, and the difficulty in trying to teach that child must be extraordinary.
Yes, it is. It is one of the reasons why UNESCO recently published a very far-reaching report called Education Under Attack. Because very often when we look at the casualties of conflict and war, we look at obvious casualties, but we very seldom think about the effect, both short-term, in terms of demolishing schools, in terms of targeting teachers. Look at female teachers in Afghanistan under the Taliban, but even today in some parts. Look at the impact it has in countries like Colombia or Mexico with the drug retaliation against sometimes trade union. So there is a definite need to look at violence on children. Both violence breeds violence, of course, but we need to break this vicious cycle of violence. And of course, providing education of quality to children from an early age is absolutely essential to break that vicious circle.
How do you remain optimistic? You have been doing this for a long time. You've seen a lot of tragedy. You have to have.
Well, you know, every day when I get up, I think how fortunate I was. Not because my family gave me sometimes nice clothes. I'm Canadian, by the way. I come from Montreal. But the most important, my family gave me the means to be able to see the world and to try to make a difference. I think, as you mentioned, you're back from Southern Sudan. I've been to Southern Sudan too, 25 years ago, 20 years ago. 10 years ago. I've been to terrible situations around the world, and every time when I see that, you have no choice but to remain optimistic, because I think, thank God, what a chance I have to have had the privilege that I've had, and it is my duty to try to help improve, even if it's only a little bit, the life of one person around the world. I consider it then a successful day.
I have to say, and I have said this, that in some ways I feel an obligation to remember every face. And yet there are times when I wish I could forget it all. Don't you feel that way?
Yes, definitely I do. Yes, I do. But at the same time, I think that it is very humbling to see probably the most thing and the most powerful emotional situation I have to do when I met people who had nothing. They were literally without clothes, without food, a mother with a child at her breast, without milk, and I saw the dignity of that person. And when I looked at that person and she looked at me, I could see that the dignity is so very important. So I want to remember these faces because sometimes as painful it is, and as it is a necessary reminder that feeds what we do every day. It is a reminder to think, if this woman in this refugee camp in the Darfur region or in Myanmar today has the courage to continue with dignity her life and not to beg for help, I think it is my duty to remember her face so that again we can try together to do something.
Do you find more clarity there, or do you find it more here at UN headquarters?
That's a very good question. I honestly, after 28 years, I don't have that answer. And maybe that's why every 4 years I go from here to there. But more seriously, I think that we need both. This is like people who say too much government, not enough government. But at the end of the day, we need to have discussion here, open discussion. We need to have this venue where people with very different histories, with sometimes alienation and ignorance, meet and discuss. This is solved in a week or a month. That's why at times, yes, we get those of us who have come all of our adult life in the UN system, we think it's a little bit fair. The UN that failed ever. It's like that we need to country or my country to get to the level of development and open the level of service. It takes a lot of time. So yes, we need to have discussions here. At times it is a little more frustrating, but this is what life is all about, and I think it's very important. We need to have both the policy that are taken, the decision, and we need the work on the ground. It's not an either or, it's one with the other.
Helen-Marie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
One very passionate voice right here at the United Nations headquarters. Now, sometimes I guess we can't decide if this is the best place or sometimes in the field is the best place. Maybe. It's both. This is Jack Rice at the United Nations headquarters.